sort of a technical issue, but I see that we're back on now. So if everyone can join us again, I'm sorry about that technical issue. Let's see if we're live again. I think we're gaining our viewers back. We had a bit of a technical glitch, and we were kicked offline. But it looks like everybody is rejoining now. So I hope everyone will just be able to get back on. We have started again. I'm not quite sure where we lost everyone. So everyone who's joining, thank you for joining. It seems like we lost the connection, and we are back online. Back here with James Tanner. We're really excited about today's show. It seems like we got disconnected for some reason, so I'm sorry about that. And if everyone could just let us know where we ended off, so we don't miss anything. Thank you, everyone who's rejoining. We'll take a few minutes just to wait for everyone to get here. I'm sorry about that, James, and hopefully we'll get everyone back. I guess there was some sort of a technical issue, and it just went offline. So only so much we can control.
That's pretty possible with it being all the way around the world like it is.
Exactly. It's a wonder that we're able to do these with all these viewers from around the world as it is. So we're so grateful for the ability. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we're sorry about that technical issue. We hope that you're all rejoining us. And it looks, somebody said here that we ended just when James joined. So just when you got back on, James, and you said that you didn't know about the most recent update. And we were saying that things just, that it was the most recent update and it was hot off the presses from today. So that's what we were, I believe, saying when we lost everyone. So, yeah, I think you can take it away. I hope that everyone who was in the last session can join us. And just one more note that I didn't mention before, all of our Facebook Lives, including this one, are available on the MyHeritage Facebook page. So if you miss anything or if you'd like to rewatch it later, you can go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/MyHeritage, and under the video section, you'll find this Facebook Live as well as all of our other Facebook Lives. So just in case you miss anything today, not to worry, you can go and rewatch the session, so no problem. And so I think now most of everyone has rejoined, I hope, and found us. And so just to recap, we're welcoming James Tanner here, a really experienced genealogist who we love having on the show. And he'll be speaking today about using MyHeritage tools to jumpstart your genealogical research. So now I'll let you take it away, James.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm glad to be here. We're here I'm located in Provo, Utah in the United States. And it's a nice cold day here, and we had a bit of snow yesterday, and it looks like we may have some more in the next day or so. We're going to talk today about the tools to jumpstart your genealogical research. And as Esther was saying, this is something that changes regularly with MyHeritage. I think it's important to understand that MyHeritage is a lot more than a DNA and family tree. I think we have a tendency to focus on those, very, very important features. But when we understand the underpinnings and all of the other fabulous tools that have been created by MyHeritage, it just is, it's quite amazing. And so we view the website as a set of sophisticated and complex tools for helping users with all aspects of their genealogical research. And this is becoming just every day, practically. It's very frequent, not like every single day, but very frequently we get new information and new updates of the programs and of the tools available from MyHeritage. As a matter of fact, as I was sitting here waiting to come online, I got an email from one of my friends who was just praising the tremendous amount of information that he has received from MyHeritage. He's a new user, and it just he just is overwhelmed with all of the interconnected information that he's been able to find. So it's a very valuable and timely subject to look at a little bit more in depth into what's available here online. And I think, first of all, we need to understand the underpinnings here, because all of the tools are supported by an ever-increasing educational system. This is education.myheritage.com, the MyHeritage database or knowledge base, and it is grows just almost every day. I mean, there's additional it's hard to follow all of the additional information that's added. A lot of these presentations and the webinars and other things that are done throughout the month, each month, end up here on the knowledge base. But in addition to that, there's specific articles written about the new features and about all the other information that's necessary to operate the website. So here's a few of just a scattering of some of the very important tools that are here on this on myheritage.com. Now, obviously, before you get started, you need an account. You need to create an account and a login. You need to have access to it. And as Esther mentioned briefly, there are different levels of membership or subscription to the website. What you can do, there's a free level, then it goes up to their complete level, which contains all of the information that's available. So it's sort of graduated. I don't think this is really, I've had a lot of people say, well, you know, that's pretty expensive to have that kind of subscription. And then my question is, how much would it cost you to travel to the places where all these records are coming from, and where would it, what would you have to pay individually for all of the features on the program? And so it's, you know, there's a trade-off here. We always have to be aware of the cost of these things, but I always compare it here in Utah. One of the big things that people have are all-terrain vehicles, or ATVs. Those ATVs cost thousands of dollars, and to lug one around on a trailer behind a big truck is very expensive. And I say, well, you know, you could be interested in doing ATVs or something like golf that is very expensive, but you've chosen family history, which does have some cost, but isn't nearly as expensive as those. The first step, obviously, before you can even key into any of these tools, is that you need to add what you already know about your family to a family tree. With many of us, that's done on when we sign in. We may not get quite enough information to start getting all the additional helps from MyHeritage, but we need to get to this point where we've put in the people who've gone before, the deceased people that we have and that we know about, so that MyHeritage actually begins the process of analyzing the information that you provide and providing you with even more information. This slide is sort of shows my first few generations of my family tree, and the green and brown dots on all these people are smart matches and record matches that are waiting for me to process. I spend most of my time out on areas that aren't as well known, and so unfortunately there are so many of these additional hints, record hints and record matches that, I mean record matches and smart matches, that it becomes a job, and the amount of information is just absolutely the word I'm going to use is overwhelming, but it's very, very useful, and it's something that we really need to be aware of. So the first level here is to use the record matches. Those are the brown icons, to add information from sources to your family tree. What we mean by this is a source is a record or a document that was created at or near the time or around the time that a person was that lived, and was made by someone who either knew the information firsthand or had some governmental or legal reason for recording the information. So those documents can be used and are what we call sources. We evaluate how accurate they are as we go through the process, but they are where we get the primary information. And what we're trying to do as genealogists is build a family tree based on sources, based on the actual information, historical information that's available. So I chose one of my grandparents to do this exercise and illustrate how it works. Henry Christian Overson, born in 1868 and died in 1947. So here's the record matches for Henry. And when I looked for the record matches, I found a 1900 federal census for Henry's family. And this was one taken in the United States. There are the decennial censuses every 10 years. And the 1900 census shows his residence and an approximate birth date. The census birth dates aren't as accurate as other records, but they're helpful in getting information. So I can look on the right-hand side here and see this record that's available. And then on the left-hand side, I see his name and a summary of the information that I already have, and decide whether I want to look at this match and use that information in my family tree. So this is the schedule that it brought up. And meaning the schedule is the page in the census that it brought up. They're called census schedules. And we can look at that and look down the names there, and we can see that there is Henry Overson. It's right here. I'll try to mark it with my cursor a little bit. But here's a blow up of that, and you can see a lot of information here has come out about this particular person. It has an approximate birth date. It has the date of the age he was at the time that this census was taken. It has his wife's name and interestingly, some additional information that you might be interested in: his where he was born, where his parents were born, and his parents were born in Denmark, and his wife's parents were born in England and Massachusetts. So kind of an interesting combination there. And it also says that he was basically a carpenter. That was his employment, and on and on. So this is valuable information that we've obtained. And the point here being that I didn't have to go out and look through the census records to find this particular record, because MyHeritage had done that and provided me with a record match that gave me the opportunity to evaluate and look at this particular record. And if I look at the record completely, I'll see that Henry's father was also on the record. And you go down, you go up, and you'll find that there's another person named with the same surname right above him, and that turns out to be his father and his mother. So there's more information than obviously just this one record match has provided me with a significant amount of information about my family. So as I expand the zoom in here, you can see O.V.C. Overson and his family, my great-great-grandfather, and my great-great-grandmother and their children that were still in the house at the time of the census in 1900. So this is valuable information, and it's brought through those little record matches that are you show up on your family tree. And use Smart Matches, that's the green icons there, that green icon, to find your relatives. Now, that sounds interesting, But what happens here is that there are millions of people on the MyHeritage website with family trees. And MyHeritage will go through and match the people in your family tree with people in other people's family tree, not just names and dates, but they take the patterns of the family trees and match those two patterns, the parents, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, the children, the grandchildren, these sort of things. When those patterns match, then they make a suggestion that you have a matching pattern with someone else who has your relative in their family tree. So obviously the person who put, if that's correct, then the person who entered that information in a different family tree is one of your cousins, one of your one person you're related to. So you found a whole lot of relatives all of a sudden if that person's family tree matches yours. So then you get the chance of looking at those at several potential relatives. And that means that this person here that matches me has all that information in their family tree, and that's their name, and they view the match. In my case, I'm looking at this, the name here, it's hard to see that on the screen, but the person that I'm matched to is from France. And that's really a surprise because I had no idea that I had any connections with anybody in France. To my knowledge, I have no French ancestors. And so it intrigues me as to why this person may have been matched to someone. Why did this person have one of my ancestors in their family tree? So you can see that this can lead into a lot of information and connections. Now, you do have the choice of either accepting, once you review the match and see what it looks like, you can accept it or reject it, or you can simply ignore it. And depending on your personal goals and your amount of research, if you have a lot of research and you have lots and lots of people, like I have tens of thousands of pending matches, basically I have to use them in a different way. I have to go to them for the people that I am actively researching, and then basically the rest of that information as I have time to add to my family tree. Okay, now we're going to shift gears because we're going to look at a lot of different tools. This one is called the Tree Consistency Checker. And you can run this anytime. This is a selection under your family tree menu item up there at the top of the screen. You click on your family tree, and it's one of the selections that the drop-down menu. And then you can, from that, you can tell. It just starts to run. In other words, once you say yes, go ahead and do my checker, it will start looking through your family tree. Now, this is a good news, bad news kind of thing. The good news is that it's actually finding lots of different inconsistencies in your family tree. Lots of things that may be wrong, that don't add up or make sense. For example, the two that show here is a person is shown as alive, but but they were born in 1682, so probably not alive. And another person that was born in 1684, and another one that was shown born in 1700. And they're not marked deceased, so the program is asking you, why are these people not marked deceased? And that's something very simple. On the next one down, it's parents are too young when having a child. And you need to go through each of these categories and look at them. And some of them basically are talking about some format kinds of things, but others are specifically identifying information that is either very, very much incomplete or just wrong and not entered correctly. It could be typographical, or it might just be something that's been carried over from another research where it wasn't done properly. But this is the tree consistency checker. And at this point, before I go too much further, I'm going to make to advise you to remember there are educational resources to help you and answer your questions. Because as you go down through each of these tools, you're going to have questions. Well, how does this work? Well, why do I want to use this? Where is this located? All of that information is covered in the knowledge base or the help menu, the help center menu, where you can get information about how all of these different parts of your program work. Okay, well, now we're going to jump again, and that is my suggestion is to take a MyHeritage DNA test. Let's just say, as a old-time genealogist, having been doing genealogy for about 40 years now, I basically, when DNA started to become a big issue, my question was, I've done so much research and I have so many people in my family tree, why do I need a DNA test? I mean, what am I going to learn about a DNA test? Well, that was, as over time and as this works in the way that it works, MyHeritage has developed some tools over time. Some of the other DNA companies have tools, but these are more. This is opinion. I think they're more sophisticated on MyHeritage than some of the other companies. But the new genetic groups technology created the ethnicity, death, and resolution to 2114 geographic areas. So that was mentioned briefly by Esther at the beginning. We're talking about information that is much more specific and much more usable from these genetic groups than the old what we've been getting used to as ethnicity reports, because this will help to pinpoint the people who would have those particular gene patterns into smaller and smaller geographical areas, which gives you a more focused view of how it works out. Well, okay, so now very basically what the DNA test does is it shows you people who are your relatives and who match your DNA. And you can see here at the time I took this screenshot that I had only 2 people in my close family. I had 16 in my extended family, meaning my grandparents and great-grandparents. And then I had a huge number of distant relatives. Now, how this played out in my particular case was the mystery of my adopted great-grandfather. My great-grandfather came from Denmark. This is another one that came from Denmark, and his name was Marinus Christensen. And Marinus was, in the family tradition, was adopted. People had said, well, he was adopted. But my genealogical research didn't demonstrate that. I found him on the census record in Denmark. I found him in lots of different records. And none of those indicated that he was other than a child of the family. The biggest problem was that his age, his birth date, put him in the situation where his 2 sisters, his 2 other siblings in that family, were 18, 19, 20 years older than he was. Oh, so we were speculating about perhaps one of those daughters was the actual mother of the child and not the family, and they had just called him adopted. Well, okay, so then, then we came along to, oh, by the way, at this point, I'll interrupt the story for a little bit of more information. This is a colorized photo. This photo was obviously taken back in the 1800s, and it was black and white. And this is kind of a remarkable thing. And because I mentioned that, I thought, well, we better start talking about, we'll come back to the mystery, but we ought to see what it looked like. So this is the colorized and enhanced photos. The one on the left on your screen, the black and white version, is the original photograph, which actually is a pretty good photograph. The one on the right has been colorized and enhanced. From my perspective, the colorization has just increased the impact of that photo. It brings out details about the person that I would never have noticed. The one I really notice is the streak of a little tiny bit of grayness in her hair. So it's an amazing technology, and if you're in the MyHeritage, you can upload your photos and have them colorized within a matter of a few minutes, a few seconds actually, and they will just be amazing. This is the new one. This is the one that Esther mentioned. This is the Restore Colors tool. The picture here on the left is an old photograph. It's a pretty good photograph, but it has an orange or reddish cast, and that cast is the disintegration of the color in the original photograph. The chemicals that make up the photograph over time just naturally fade and change color, which increases rapidly if the photograph is left out into the light. But even if it's kept in a drawer or a dark box or someplace, the chemical reactions will eventually degrade the photograph. On the right, excuse me, is the restored colors, and you can instantly see that it's solved a lot of almost every one of the issues with the original photograph. And so it's just an amazing technology. This is something that, as a photographer, and by the way, I have been a photographer since I was a young child, and have been a professional photographer for the last few years. I basically can't imagine how this happens. I've never been able to see how they could do this. So okay, so now let's go back to the mystery. After nearly 40 years of research, I found evidence of the adoption. That was the first thing. I found a church record that had a notation on it that he was adopted. Now, later, we had a DNA test. Well, obviously, I took a DNA test some time ago with MyHeritage, but my daughter happened to see that and had doing a research, had looked for and found a person by the same name born in the same place who was not the son of that family, was not a member of that family. But we didn't know if that was the correct one. But when we got into the DNA test that we had on MyHeritage, we actually found out that we were related to people who were descendants of other members of that other candidate family for being the parents. And what it turned out was that the wife, or the mother of Marinus's mother, had not been married to his father. And for who knows what reason, then the child, he ended up being adopted by the Christiansen family. So he was adopted. And it was through the DNA test that we had from MyHeritage and the records and the research that we did that we were able to solve this mystery. But without the DNA test, we would never have known that particular connection or been able to verify that that was actually someone we were related to. And this is this is not an unusual situation. It's very common, and it can even happen that someone will find out, as we read about in the newspaper from time to time. The news stream, I guess there isn't paper anymore. The news stream, from time to time, people find out that they're not related to their parents, so they end up with new parents. And anyway, new bloodline parents. So here we come to another part of the DNA program, and DNA connects you to other helpful tools. And those tools are those over here. You can see the theory of family relativity, which will build you a hypothetical or suggested pedigree back to a common ancestor. I've blocked out the names because these people are still alive, and I didn't want their names in here, but normally you'll be given the name of your cousin. And you have ancestral surnames in common to you. Your family has one smart match, and the places are common. So basically, you can find out that this person who I match as in DNA is very, very likely to be my relative. I mean, from my standpoint, I would assume yes, he is, and it's simple to confirm because I can contact him and simply ask him if I am related to him. How am I related to you? And then if he knows, and we can compare. But MyHeritage has done almost all that work for us. So we know that this is a potential person that we're related to. So we have the theory of family relativity, which will give you a proposed pedigree back to a common ancestor. And then this is what it looks like. So the person down here is the DNA match. And now using all of the tools on MyHeritage, then you can work backwards through and see how you're related back to this one person. Now, one of the things that turned out on MyHeritage that was also confirming that Marinus Christensen had been adopted was that all of the people who are his descendants through that Christensen line matched to us through our Christensen line, but all the people who matched from his sisters on my own line, by the way, the reason that they're both related is because my father and mother married. My mother was a Christensen and my father was an Overson. And so when the Christensens married the Oversons, and so technically my parents were second cousins. But it turns out, and that's something I always said, oh, my parents are second cousins. But now I have to say, no, my parents really aren't second cousins because Marinus Christensen was not related to that family. He was adopted. Okay, so there's a lot of things that are clarified by using these particular tools. You can also contact your DNA matches directly through MyHeritage using the smart matching technology. Now, whether you contact them or not is entirely up to you, and whether they contact you or not is entirely up to you also. You don't have to take these contacts, you don't have to maintain them, and you don't have to do anything with them, but they are there, and they are extremely valuable depending on what part of the world you come from. If you're from someplace in Eastern Europe, you definitely have to do this. Now, recently, my wife received a note from her family on her family lines on MyHeritage, and someone contacted her. She's been doing Swedish research for years and years on her Swedish line. Her father's line was from Sweden, and surprisingly, she got a DNA contact from someone in Sweden who claimed to be a relative. Well, by using MyHeritage and by looking at the family trees that were available on both sides, they were able to rather quickly establish the common ancestor. And the bonus for my wife was that she had all of the extra information that this person in Sweden who spoke Swedish, which my wife does not, had already accumulated about this family. And so there were lots of additional family members and lots of potential research that could be done now because of this contact that came directly from a DNA test. So it was both the DNA match and the smart matches that helped them, that helped the two of them, both the person in Sweden and the person here in the United States, to make that connection. One of the basic things about genealogical research is that accurate genealogical research depends on the accuracy of the location of the events in your ancestors' lives. This is something if you're doing research and you don't have this ingrained in your methodology of the way you do your research, I suggest you read this kind of thing over and over, that you kind of say location, location before you get started. MyHeritage has created a pedigree map that jumps out and shows you all the locations of events in your relatives and your ancestors' lives, and then adds to that all of the locational information over time. So this is basically one person's pedigree, but this is based on place. I mean, this is not one person's pedigree. This is based on the place where the event occurred. So here's all the events that happened, and if I zoom in on those events, you can see exactly where all of those came from. Now, that helps you in an area called cluster research, which is a method of using the records, genealogical records, to reconstruct families in the context of their community. And so cluster research is important because it also identifies what I call outliers. Those are the people who have been included in your family, but really only matched by name or date or something, and aren't really members of your family. Obviously, you need to start with a family tree, and it is really important. And what I can say with absolute certitude is that without a family tree, it is impossible, almost impossible, to make any of the connections or use any of the tools that I've gone through. The reality is that I have, as I briefly went by, I have thousands of people in my DNA matches, but of those thousands of people, there's a relatively small number of them who actually have family trees in the MyHeritage program. And so if you just are kind of one of those, I have a DNA test, but I haven't done anything with it person, then you really need to get involved and start putting some names into MyHeritage, because then you get to use all the rest of the resources. Now, another point to make at this is, yes, you do need to have a complete subscription for all of these values to be used. You can't, you can start out with a free program and put in some information and take a DNA test, and you will get your results, but you're not going to be able to share those and get all of the records and other information that you need. So really important that you take the time to add your information to your family tree. So I'm not frustrated. I have a personal interest in this. So as more people do that, then I'm not looking at somebody that I have never heard of in my life as a DNA match, and absent being able to contact that person directly, which I could do. But otherwise, it'd be helpful if I knew for some, at least an idea of which family lines that they belong to, so that I could evaluate whether it was somebody that I really needed to talk to or somebody that would just be interesting to talk to. So kind of the challenge here is to learn about and use all of the tools. There's even more. There's a lot more than I can cover in the time that we have here today, because there's just an amazing amount of information out there. And that's it. Thank you for watching today.
Thank you, James. And what a thorough presentation. I just see so many comments about how detailed it was and all the different features. So for anyone who missed any part of it, just to reiterate that you can access this Facebook Live as well as all of our Facebook Lives on the MyHeritage Facebook page. So if you missed any part of it, you can go back and rewatch, and it'll be there. It's saved, and you can watch it at any point in time. So don't worry about that, as well as all of our past Facebook Lives. So just a reminder before we get to the questions, That anyone who puts a comment about, we said with Valentine's Day coming up, about how their ancestors met or something that they learned about their ancestors and how they fell in love or ended up together through MyHeritage, let us know in the comments section, and you'll be entered for our draw of a MyHeritage complete plan. And we hope that that you're able to enter a comment there and join our draw. So I see so many comments here, James. Adriana says, thank you, great presentation. So many comments here. Gail says, thank you so much for these webinars. I'm a lazy scholar and I prefer to listen rather than to go looking for the information. So we love these sessions too. Thank you for joining us, to all of you out there. But if you do prefer to read the information and gather it on your own, the different pieces, as James pointed out, the MyHeritage knowledge base is a great place to start. That's education.myheritage.com. So much information there, how-to videos, webinars, articles. So a lot of great information that you can access there on a wide variety of topics. So James, if it's okay, we'll just do a few questions before we get to the draw.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So let's see. Yumi asks, I've wondered at times how to deal with those who are resistant to taking a DNA test. How do we ease their concerns?
Well, it's kind of a really private thing that you need to be aware that some people have those concerns. I think it's a way to measure the benefits as opposed to the risk, I guess, is a benefit risk issue. So it's a conversation that you need to get into is, why don't you want to have a DNA test? I mean, what is there? And here's why I do want to have one and what it would help me and help us to understand. You could, and that's just, I mean, that's just human nature, and you just need to be very diplomatic and certainly don't want to ruffle any feathers that would cause problems that would say, well, I'm never going to talk to you about this. Anyway, we need to avoid getting confrontational because it's a way of gathering information. Sometimes we just have to say, okay, well, that relative doesn't want to talk to us right now, and we'll come back later and see, maybe they will change their mind. So that's all I can suggest.
Okay, I saw a question here that I'll just quickly answer about DNA testing. That if you've taken a DNA test through another service, you can upload your DNA test to MyHeritage. So myheritage.com/DNA/upload. And you can upload a test from 23andMe, from Ancestry, and you can also pay the $29 upload fee, and that will unlock a number of advanced DNA features, and you can read all about it there on that page. So for anyone who has taken a DNA test at a different service, that is available for you. And then you'll get DNA matches on MyHeritage. You'll have a lot of different options open to you that you may not have at other services. James, this one is for you from Colin, and he says, when was it illegal for second cousins to marry?
The marriage is, that's a historical thing that goes way back into customs that were in effect even back in the Middle Ages, thousands of years ago. It's something that's cultural based. And in the United States, the prohibitions varied from location to location, from colony to colony, and then from state to state, and they still do to some extent. Most of the issues were based on a lack of any information and traditions that people were very concerned that relatives, people who married who were too closely related, would have a number of genetic defects, and that if you married someone who was too closely related, that those genetic defects could be propagated through the society. Most of that is now answered by genetic testing, by the DNA testing, and a lot of these laws that they have are now outmoded. There's no actual reason for that to occur. My parents in Arizona, where they got married, did not prohibited marriages between first cousins, but not between second cousins. So there was no problem with their particular choices. I guess the summary on that, I'm leaving it a little open there, but the summary is you just have to look at the individual history of that particular law in that state, because they're all going to be slightly different and have a different reason for what they say.
Okay. I had a question for you, actually, James, which I've been wondering, which is, what is your favorite MyHeritage feature out of all of them?
My favorite feature is the tree consistency checker. The reason why it's my favorite one is because it gives me the most trouble. I mean, I have to kind of grit my teeth every time I go do it, because I know I'm going to just see a whole bunch of stuff I need to work on. But it is really the only way I have of getting any kind of overall view on how consistent my family tree is. And I have people who say, "Oh, I've been working on my tree for 50 years, and it's absolutely correct. I've verified everything." And I say, well, run the consistency checker. That'll give you a different viewpoint of what you've done over the last few years.
And how often do you run it? Because surely you have quite a large tree.
No, I don't run it too often, because I'm very much, I have only a little, right now I only have a small slice of time that I can dedicate to my own work, because I help so many, I'm involved in so many direct help organizations. My wife and I are missionary volunteers at the Brigham Young University Family History Library, and we go live every week, and that increases because we take call-in referrals. So we're doing a lot of help and research for people, and that's just one of the people that I help. So that's, it's kind of hard to fit in everything, but it's nice to help people also.
Amazing. That's amazing work to help others like that. Fantastic. We have a comment here from Kristen about the inconsistencies, that she's forever being told that she spells a name wrong. Is there a way to shut it off? So you can ignore them, correct?
Oh yeah, you don't have to. You don't even have to look. In fact, when you go in there, there's where you click on the right-hand side, there's a thing, you just let it go away. You just say, I don't want to look at this anymore. So yeah, you can say there's no problem here. I'm right, you're wrong.
Right, because it is after all, it's algorithms, it's a computer. So we're saying that according to what we think, this is what, for example, the age difference between a husband and wife should be no more than X years. But obviously there's in real life, there's lots of situations that are kind of out of the mold and not, that don't fit exactly into the checks.
Yeah, one of those most common one that I run into is that age, that this person was too old to have, this lady was too old to have children, or the other way around, that they were too young to get married. There are a lot of places in the customs, in the societies around the world, where women were married at age 14 or even earlier. And so to uniformly cut that off, but they're going to alert you to that. That's the important thing. It's alerting you to look at that and see if it makes sense. If it doesn't, then normally I would very much question a 14-year-old from my cultural background, but that's not the case around the world.
Right, so true. We have a question here from Julia, who says, my mother's maiden name is Major. I've had people hint that this name dates back to the Majors in Britain. How can I start to find out if this is true?
put your tree in families in MyHeritage and start doing some research. Let them find the sources for you. It may very well prove out that that's correct. Most of the time, people are uniformly, when they start out with MyHeritage, they're overwhelmed with the amount of information they receive. And that's why I talked about one of my friends who just emailed me just as we were beginning to tell me that he was just overwhelmed all the information that he was getting on this one family. So that's the only way you can do it. Major is a common surname in England, and maybe in other places. My name Tanner is a very common surname in England, but it turns out it's also a common surname in Switzerland and parts of Germany. So you need to do some research and not just rely on the fact that somebody says, well, your name's the same as they have them in one place or another.
Okay, and I see another comment here from Bonda who says, I have a great-grandmother who was a major. So maybe if you're both on MyHeritage, you'll get a smart match, and you never know where that'll lead you.
Yeah.
So that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you so much for answering those, James. And now we'll get to the big draw for the MyHeritage Complete Plan. We're very excited to give this out to one lucky winner who entered a story, who told us about the love stories in their family history. We loved seeing all your entries, some really, really fantastic ones in the comments here. So thank you everyone who shared these great stories. And if you didn't get a chance, even though the draw is ending now, please do write to us, leave a comment, tell us what you're learning about your ancestors and how they met on MyHeritage, whatever you've learned about them on MyHeritage, whether it be in a newspaper article or a historical record, maybe a marriage certificate with information that you didn't know before. We'd love to hear about it. So feel free to leave comments about those stories even later on. And the winner for today's complete plan is Todd Copeland. And Todd wrote to us, he said, my great-grandfather used to tell a story about attending a dance as a young man, and he was able to woo a young lady away from her escort at the dance. He ended up giving her a ride home. He claimed that the horse knew the way home and didn't need his attention. He said he was able to do his best talking during the trip home, and they were married not too long after. What a lovely story. It actually reminds me, Todd, it reminds me of the story of my grandparents. My grandmother was on a date with a young man, and my grandfather saw this couple on a date and offered to drive them home at the end of the night. And he dropped the man off first and ended up speaking to the lady, and they were engaged 2 weeks later, and that's my grandparents. So he somehow managed to take over the evening. So really, really lovely story, Todd, and we'll be in touch with you through private message to claim your prize. Congratulations on the MyHeritage Complete Plan. And James, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
What a great overview. You went through so many amazing features on MyHeritage, and I know it'll be really, really useful for everyone who is here today, as well as anyone else who goes and rewatches it. So thank you again.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
And we wish you all well. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Bye.